perhaps a slightly controversial topic. How many testers in the room? How many of you work on? How many of you don't work on a test team? Just me. All right. How many are here? Actually, how many of you are here for less of what you want to hear me say and more to argue with me about how stupid I am at the end?
I'll take it.
All right. Let's get going. I think I've done with my funny jokes or funny self-deprecation for now. Okay, let's go on. So, how many of you have been using software for like 10 years or more? a lot of it. Ian? Ian multiply. A lot of it's changing.
Wait a minute, I said bite me yet today?
Yeah, not yet. What you'll find when I talk about this stuff today is it works in some contexts, in some cases many contexts, not all contexts. But for a lot of software we make today, we're making a lot more web services, we're making a lot more web apps, we're doing a lot of things that ship monthly, weekly, daily, hourly, versus the products I used to work on that shipped every 3 years. I can just remember, I freaked out. I started Microsoft and Windows 95 team, and it shipped, and they had Dom Perignon, and I'm a big wine drinker, and I like to drink the wine, and they were like pouring it over each other's heads. This is ridiculous, but it was a crazy ship party. But ship parties are harder now because we ship twice this week. And my liver is a little older than it used to be, so I can't do stuff like that anymore. So there's some stuff that's changing, and that'll come up in context later. People's expectations are changing. Think about like how many of you downloaded an app for your phone today? Probably a lot of you. And how often do you download an app, like try it and go nope and uninstall it? People are fickle. People used to, I mean, you won't believe this, but I'll tell you, people lined up, this is my last, I hope, Windows 95 reference, but these idiots, these people, I'm on the air. They lined up at midnight to buy a Windows 95, an operating system. And now you download an app and go, nope, next one, nope, this one worked for a while. I tried I have like a running app on my phone, like everybody does, and I tried like 6 before I found the one I liked. And the one I picked was one I tried and then deleted and came back to. So people are using apps in web browsers a lot more. Your app is a service. So we'll forget Facebook for now, but where an installation is only an F5 away. Like update F5. It's pretty good. So the question that comes out of these is, a lot has changed, so it's probably worthwhile to think about whether we need to change the way we make software or the way we test software. Any of you have this book? So if you have it, great, thanks. If you don't bother. It's completely obsolete. It's how, if you see one, you can just take a Sharpie, write how we used to test software. A lot of the concepts are the same, but it's so much has changed in those 8 years. I did a presentation about at a conference last year on how we used to test software at Microsoft. Literally called that, or maybe I call it how we now test software at Microsoft. But I did the thing where I went back and looked at history to see what was happening in 2008 when this book came out. And you know, Netflix wasn't streaming yet. What kind of world can you imagine where Netflix doesn't stream? All right. So I've been a tester, and I'm still technically a tester, although by the end of this talk we may discuss whether that's true or not. But I've been testing for a long time. I've had a lot of different titles. I've been a test architect. I was one of the first test architects at Microsoft. I don't know what that means. I was the director of test excellence. I've been currently just an engineering manager. Weird. I call myself the DQP, designated quality person for my team. I'll talk more about that a little bit later, but I want to kind of get into some of the theory first, then we'll talk about the actual practical stuff. That way, the people that just want the concepts can get all their information, and the people that want, like, I just want to hear stories can get those too, and hopefully we'll get to the end. By the way, you can interrupt. You don't have to save your questions for the end. You can. I'll leave time for questions. I think there will be some. But if something's burning and you want to say, "Oh, tell me what you mean," go ahead. So let's take care of the first question first. All right. I know what you're thinking. Close your eyes for a second, or just visualize what you're thinking, and raise your hand if I'm correct. Really? Nobody? No, you were thinking that. All right. So in this world, with no testers, who owns quality? Everybody. If everybody owns quality, then nobody owns quality. It's a paraphrase of a Mark Mandu quote from like 20 years ago. What does an engineer do on teams that have? We just have software engineers. We don't need testers. Well, what does that mean? What's different? So let me talk about, and this comes back to a question I asked about 5 minutes ago. Nobody ever said that testers and developers must be separated. It's been a practice followed by a lot of teams. I do forget the name of the person. There's a story in the obsolete book about Microsoft's first tester, and how it all started was there was these guys working on the Visual Basic compiler, and every day, at the end of the day, they would take all the code they'd written for the compiler, and they'd go compile about 100 different programs and make sure they still run. And they were bored. So they said, let's hire like a high school intern to do this. So they did, and he was Microsoft's first tester.
Yeah.
And then more people went, hey, I don't have to test, I need some other guy to test my stuff for me? That's great. We'll come back to that in a minute. So, testers, are you the champions of quality? Nobody? How about the last line of defense? All right, do you know who else is kind of the last line of defense? These guys.
Yeah.
And I don't do this to make fun of you, I'm making fun of myself too, because as a tester, I know there have been times, is this G or P? What's my rating on this talk? I'll be careful. There's been times when I felt like, what am I doing? Is my job really to shovel this person's manure? Clean up after you? You guys see the James Whittaker talk on his test bed? A lot of hyperbole. I like James, very good friend of mine. Test isn't really dead. So I'm not going to tell you that. So that meme is put to sleep. And we'll talk about maybe what your role is on, it may not change, it may change, it depends. I don't know, I'm not in charge. Let me talk about why I think in many cases an engineering team where the developers own the bulk or the majority or almost all of their testing makes a lot of sense. So, how many of you have played the game that I call bug ping pong? To find out in a minute. The developer says, here's my code. And you say, here's a bug. And you say, here's a fix. You say, it doesn't work. How about this one?
It works.
Yeah, you get it. You play this game, and it's inefficient. And I did my Myers-Briggs test like 10, 15, maybe 15 years ago. I feel like old, referencing these old things. You guys done Myers-Briggs?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Like any of these things, take them with a grain of salt. And I think they're far more important for understanding how you deal with other people than they are for dealing with yourself. But I got the little book, the green one, that tells you how to deal with your type. And I'm an INTP, and I read it, and it was like this miraculous horoscope. He said, INTPs abhor inefficiency. I said, yeah! So these things really bug me, these inefficiencies in software. And also, beyond the inefficiencies, I've often thought that developer, and again, it may not get this bad, but I've been in teams where there's been this real codependent relationship between the developer and the tester. It's like, here's my code, please find the bugs. And the tester says, it's kind of like ping pong. Well, thank you for giving me the code. Oh, I found bugs, I feel validated. Thank you for finding the bugs in my code. I feel great too. It's just a weird thing. So, one of the things that an engineering team can do is maybe streamline a little bit of that if there's that lack of a safety net. So that's sort of the intro. That's my long intro. So we're going to have a little bit of theory, like why I think this can work. And then I'll give you a whole bunch of my experiences. And in between, you can ask questions. At the end, you can ask more questions. You with me so far?
Yeah.
Nobody's walked out yet? I don't know if I walked out and see how far I made it. All right. Part of the reason people move this way, in the theory, is this idea of we can use the customers to test our software. When you think about services, and Google and Facebook are very famous for this. I have a funny story about Facebook. Have you heard Facebook people say, we don't have testers? You ever say that? So I went to the Google Test Automation Conference 2 years ago, and there was a guy from Facebook there, and he said, I work at Facebook, and we don't have testers. And then his next slide has, I'm a manager for a software reliability team. Whatever! So it kind of goes back to one of the punchlines is those things still need to happen, whether you call them testing or not. You still need to make sure you're building a great product for your customers. So I have this pyramid. This is like the one original thing I came up with. And this is just a variation on a lot of other models that are out there. But where quality software comes from. So good processes and the team culture are really important. And there is, anybody ever read the Business Fables by Pat Lencioni? He wrote the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and a really great book on consulting called Getting Naked. But he also wrote one book on nonfiction where he studies a lot of corporate culture, not just in software companies, but in other companies. And he found that like morale and how much a team enjoys working on a product has a direct correlation with product quality, whether that's software or something else. And I believe in that. I think, and if you think about, if you like what you're working on, you tend to do a better job at it, and that translates into better products for the customers. So I think that's the core of building great software. I've given talks before, and apparently not, because I'm going to say it again, where I think that, now I forgot what I was going to say, because I had to add all the parables, but I think that to build great software, you build a great team first. A great team can do anything. So if you get the right people who are happy and excited about it, they're going to make stuff happen. Above that, you have like your code quality, your correctness, your static analysis, your tools, etc. And then you get to a level of functional quality, like stuff kind of works. And then this is kind of where my boss isn't going to watch this. I think I can say this. This is kind of where Microsoft products have traditionally stopped. We build, I heard a great quote once, said, Microsoft builds wonderfully full-featured and fully functional products that my wife can't use. Which is kind of what Ian told me like 5 minutes ago. And then above that, you have all this ilities stuff. They don't all end in ility. You know, the performance, security, and reliability, we run stress tests, we measure things. Those things need to happen too. And then finally up here, you can do all this stuff, and you still don't know whether the customers like your product. So in the end, you've got to have some sort of pipeline. And this is true for a web app, a service, or even a big, fat, thick app that runs on a machine. You have to have a pipeline for them. Let me think of an example. I'll pick Skype. At the end of a Skype call, at least within Microsoft, you get a little survey pressing like 1 to 5 stars. What's one way to get connection? And we also have a lot of opt-in programs for telemetry. Almost every telemetry where you get data that gets sucked off of your session that's completely scrubbed for personally identifiable information, and then it's analyzed by the company. A good example where we've married the two is I worked on a project, before I worked on this current project that I can't tell you about because it's not shipped, I worked on this science project to make Android apps run on a Windows Phone. It was fun, we made it work, I had to learn some new things and didn't know what to do with it. But briefly before that, I worked on this this streaming application to stream, I can't give too much away, to stream stuff to a desktop, I'll just call it that. At the end of the session, we asked people a survey on their rating from 1 to 5 stars, what they thought. And if they gave it less than 5 stars, we asked them why not. Good subjective data. How easy is it to look at 10 of these a day? Not too bad. 100, kind of gross. 1,000, really sucks. So very quickly, that doesn't scale well. We started looking at the feedback and going, can we detect these things automatically? And little by little, it said video is glitchy. Let's look what we have. Let's add a little bit more logging around both network and frame rate, and this, and we added little more things all the time. And in less than a month, we could predict, with a high degree of accuracy, how many stars someone would give their session. At that point, we don't need to ask them anymore. Ed Keys, I think is his name, at a Google talk in 2007, a long time ago. And I hate when I'm guessing on stuff when I'm on camera because it's probably the wrong name and wrong year. But made a quote something like, good monitoring and telemetry is equal to testing. And in a way it is if you get the right mix. It's not a replacement for all testing, because testing is that accuracy measurement plus a whole bunch of other stuff. But as far as monitoring in mass, it helps out a lot. Yeah, Matt?
A question about telemetry versus the functional testing. So I just thought telemetry will tell you basically what the customer is doing, and it might tell you about performance issues and stuff. But it won't tell you, it can try to get close to the end-to-end perspective, like you can try to do this, but it doesn't get there. For that,
it doesn't tell you the experience. For that, you need to.
Right. Well, yes, but what I mean is like solving a certain scenario. Like I want to call my aunt in Connecticut, and this is the steps I go through, and that's my maybe scenario. Maybe a functional requirement is that we have this and that performance.
The way we traditionally look at that from a telemetry point of view is like a phone graph. Like a user wants to download an app. Like we want to get our app downloaded onto a phone, for example. The user can find their app in the store. They press download. It gets installed. They run it at least once. They run it the next day. You can kind of get an idea of engagement through that, but it's only a vague notion and idea. And every company that deals with this has some convoluted way of coming up with daily active users and daily engaged users, but they're all different and they're all skewed a little bit. So we had just one quick story around this science project I worked on. We had an offshore team test a bunch of apps overnight every night. And it got to the point where we stopped asking them to enter bugs. Because we had enough telemetry in our product, we could tell every problem they ran into. Again, I'm not saying that's the answer for everyone. I'm saying sometimes it works.
Okay, can you tell customer intent from telemetry? Or enough that you need to know about?
We did it at Automat for our cloud service manager. We had a correlation ID for every action.
Mm-hmm. So you know who, or at least PI stripped identity, and then you figure out what it is we're trying to do. Okay.
So I'm not going to give, this is an example, I'm not going to give the whole telemetry talk, but if you invite me back, I can. But just saying this is some context that could help a team get to this one engineering team, no testers thing. So now the next question I ask is, so do we rely on customers to test our software? And it gets thrown around a lot. I've seen this in the Twitterverse. So-and-so company just relies on their customers to test their software. And it's not exactly right. It's not semantically correct. Just know who said it. Say it right laughing.
Well.
Yeah, a hunch?
No, Rigger said something like that.
So these are my quotes, is don't rely on your customers to make sure your product's correct. You should do that yourself. But find ways, if you can figure out if you're making the right product. This is where a lot of the agile quick iterations come from, but also a lot of monitoring helps especially when you go into large scale. How many of you ever heard of a bug from a customer, and the first thing you do is, let me finish the sentence. So it's like obscure. You go, that's weird. I've never seen that. And you go try and get a repro, and try as you might, you can't get a repro. Isn't that frustrating? One way to use customers is this on Xbox. We had a black screen bug. And one of the black screen bugs we had. And it's like, no idea. We can tell when it's happened. And this was a case of, okay, we're going to cram in some telemetry to find out when it's happening, get some context. And go to, 1 million users, 100,000 users with sampling. And we get back a couple users hit it. And we got some logs from them. And now we know more context, but not enough. So it was like, okay, now we think it's one of these things, we can go back and add a little bit more. And it was this, we can detect, until they get to that stage. We can tell that they were there, we couldn't tell how they got there. But it was a case where we could absolutely not reproduce it internally, but through several iterations of adding telemetry and getting data and looking at it, we're able to finally track down, oh, that's crazy. Now I see why it happens, and we can fix it and never happen again. So these things can help. I just said a minute ago I wasn't going to give a whole telemetry talk, and I'm almost done with it. Yeah.
Does the last sentence have parentheses that say, but do user research to make sure that you try to get the right product to them the first time?
No. You can try and get the right one to them the first time, and you can do user research early on, but you still may not get it with it. You still may need to change it. I guess it depends on the product, I guess. But I'm a big fan of deliver early and often.
I mean, sort of the canonical research parable is the faster horse, right? If you ask if Henry Ford asked his customers what they wanted, they could say, "I want a faster horse."
Yeah.
So this is something I deal with in a lot of my research because I work with a methodology called value-sensitive design. And this was always something that I found very curious about Bill Gates, was that he was figuring out how to drive the company to things that people didn't know they wanted. Because he got to know people. I mean, obviously not personally, but he understood their values, their visions, and tried to craft that into something that was going to satisfy those values, maximize the delivery of those values, or minimize the delivery of the negative values.
Right. If you think about what we deliver, whether it's widgets or websites or spaceships, there's two markets you can go for. This actually relates well to this. If you can go after the market that already exists and try and be a winner there, or you can make a new market. And my canonical example for this is the iPhone. Years before the iPhone came out, I held in my hand a touch screen phone with Wi-Fi and everything. And years before the iPhone came out. And then the iPhone came out, and Steve Ballmer famously said something like, BS, it'll never take off. I paraphrase everything, especially with the camera on. But the point is, what the iPhone did is people in tech, we all had smartphones already, whether it was a BlackBerry or a Windows, what was it called, Windows Phone, whatever it was called, or something. What the iPhone did is made people that didn't know what a smartphone was want a smartphone. So, can't remember how I got there, but we got it. So, back to the regularly scheduled presentation. We asked this already. Who owns quality? Meekly me. Better question. What is quality?
Open-ended. It's a very broad question.
It is. Another one of my favorite quotes from myself. I can only get the quotes non-paraphrased for myself, but the answer to any sufficiently complex question is, it depends. So, I always start with the Jerry Weinberg quote, quality is valued to some person. And then Bach and Bolton have added who matters, but I'll stick with the Weinberg one. So, quality is valued to some person. To me, some person is the customer. So if we kind of flip that around and mix some words, do some word merging, is who owns creating value for the customer. And it's this weird, that goes back to that Mark Mandic quote, everybody owns quality, then nobody owns quality. But it's certainly not a test team's responsibility to own quality, even if you have a separate test team. You can be the champions of quality, or the last line of defense, or the quality-minded people. And again, I'll talk in just a second about what I do on my team. And it's going to sound, even though we have no testers on the team, technically, it's going to sound surprisingly like a testing job. So we'll loop it all around. Let's talk about a bunch of theory about what kind of things go into this. Now I want to talk about what I do on my team. So I joined a team last June working on a V1 web app. And I was on this science project where I was bored out of my mind. And I just wanted to do something else. So I'm looking around the company, and I'm typically an individual contributor. I've been a manager before. Ian used to work for me. That's why I gave him a bad time over there many, many years ago. He couldn't even grow facial hair yet.
Always had enough.
So there was this job for this manager job. I think I found it like searching for quality jobs or something, and it was a weird job description because it didn't sound like you wanted a manager. I thought maybe it was misfiled, it was interesting, and I emailed the guy, and we went and talked, and they're like, oh, I like what you're building, and but what do you want? And I told the job is, we have an engineering team, but we need someone to think about quality. And the thing is, for years, I've said, there are plenty of wrong ways to do a combined unified engineering team, and most of them involve not having someone think about quality, think it'll just automatically happen. So I took on that job, which is, I like to say, half test manager, half test architect, half release manager, and half whole thing. I'm up over my quota. I wear a lot of hats. I was an IC when I started on the team, individual contributor, and it was really just making sure that my peer engineering managers, it's a team of about 80 developers and me, and my job was to make sure they actually paid attention to quality. So that was sometimes code review on their unit tests, sometimes making sure they had the right test tools, just getting them to think about all the things that testers used to do. And there was one guy on another team who kind of took on the test infrastructure. We use a lot of open source, which is weird for a Microsoft product. But lots of stuff going on. So my job was to try to make this quality culture, don't let things fall through the cracks. There's a lot of stuff goes into testing. And it's easy for us easy for someone who hasn't done it before, just through lack of knowledge or ignorance, not the bad kind, the lack of knowledge kind, to just forget something. Like, I didn't know we could do this tool. I didn't know this was important. I don't know how to deal with flaky tests. So I help them with that, and then make sure things don't fall through the cracks. You guys, any of you test leads? Some of you or maybe like a technical lead, and you own like a horizontal, like reliability or performance or accessibility or globalization, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I get on this team, and I think, well, crud. I don't have a team. How are we going to get these things done? These are all good things to do, and part of my job is to figure out how we're going to do all the things we need to do. So I have like, I gotta count people here. I must have like these first 2 rows of people full of engineering managers I work with that are peers of mine, people that own development teams. I got in a meeting and I said, we need to make sure we talk about abilities and make sure they're covered across the team. You own accessibility, drive it across the team. You own globalization, drive it across the team. You own reliability, drive it across the team. You own performance, you own load, you own something else that I've forgotten. But I kind of looked until I ran out of abilities. And then these engineering managers said, well, crap, how am I going to do that? So I kind of stepped into that test manager role, said, I'll think of you as my test lead in charge of performance. I want you to make sure everybody's thinking about the right things, make sure we have the right metrics. Once a week, we're going to have a shift room to talk about this stuff. You need to prepare information to share there, etc. They're acting just like doing the same job that a lot of you do for part of your job. They do that along with managing their team. And some just nailed it from the beginning. Some needed some help. But this is the same thing when you're asking people on your test team to do these things. They can learn this stuff. Our developers write pretty good unit tests, and we have like 9 different Git repositories make up our product, but our service, our backend, our dev team on their own, our engineering team, I can't babysit all of them and tell them to do all these things all the time, but on their own, they decided they wanted to get the code coverage of the unit tests not only way up, but they got them way up, and then added a check-in gate that will fail a build if the code coverage number goes down. Oh no! Developers can learn to think like quality people. And before, in the old days, we'd go, you should do this check. They weren't doing no check, get out of my way! So they're really, and part of this depends on, it's dependent on my manager, our director, really valuing quality and supporting and celebrating people do these things. So we have our test build, we have lots of gates, which is good because we have a CI environment and a pre-production environment and a production environment. Twice a week, we just do a straight snap of our dev environment to our pre-production. We test it, I'll get back to that in a second, for a day or two, then we promote it to production. If that CI environment was like a lot of the products I worked on quality-wise, it would never make it there in 2 days. It's just, we have lots of gates in place. Do we have enough? No. Why? Because, how many of you work on web apps? Why? Because Firefox, IE, Safari, Chrome, Edge, blah, blah, blah. Just the breadth is hard. And I feel the pain most of you feel, even though I work at Microsoft, in that it works great everywhere except IE. Works fine on Chrome. So over time, I joined the team end of last June, and that guy I told you who was doing the test infrastructure stuff, he works for me now. And then, not like I took him, but like it made sense. Like I had some help here. Then I started thinking, in order for me to maybe get a better handle on owning quality, I want to be in charge of everything from the moment code is checked in until it goes to production. So we had a guy working on build, had him join my team, and then I begged for an extra head count, got one other guy who was just rocking it out of the house. So I have this team of 4 of us. We sit together, we own everything from the moment code is checked in to any one of our 9 repos until it gets to production. And that includes all the web apps, desktop apps for Mac and Windows, and mobile apps. So I feel like I can be responsible to have a little bit of control over that chunk. And so that's how we do testing, but now we do more. So I'm going to be full disclosure here. We have testers. We have 3 vendors on site and a few more off-site. The off-site take care of the fact that they do a lot of functional testing and get this breadth across these browsers because IE. Our Selenium tests for integration tests work fantastic on Chrome.
Oh, you have to work hard to make it work on IE.
Yeah, we run on Edge. It's just so we need that functional testing.
Yeah.
And then my on-site test vendors, they do a fantastic job. They focus on that end-to-end experience, that top of the pyramid. They look at how everything fits together. They track down stuff. I couldn't do it without it. So we have testing. So we have, if I count it all up with the 4 of us, that's 4, plus, I don't know, we must have at least 10 vendors to 100 developers. So 1 to 10, which is, different from Microsoft of the past, but still a reasonable ratio. And given we also own all the build stuff, so it's, ish. Yes?
So is all the end-to-end or bottom-up testing, that happens after check-in to the CI environment? And then
no, in fact, that's a good point, is I make the developers own CI. They have to own that CI quality. I don't want to play ping pong. I don't want that codependency. I don't want to be your safety net or your shovel user. Mm-hmm. So I don't look, nor do I let any of the people on my team look at CI. We don't care one bit about it until it gets to our pre-production environment. And we do that for our mobile apps too. We have 3 rings of deployment, 1 for the engineering team, one for the product team, development team making that mobile app, one for our team of about 100, including project management at this point, about 150, 200, and then one for the world, which now is just Microsoft plus a few externals. But the development team owns that ring, that first ring, to ring one, which is the my team name, my team. They own that deployment. I don't care about till then, but then I jump in and we will do the final sign off. I almost hate saying that, but we will put our stamp on that build going to the large audience. And I figured I have to do that because no matter what, I'm going to get yelled at if it sucks. So I figured I might as well take over responsibility for that. But one thing that's really helped to get rid of that safety net culture and get developers to own quality is that first ring, they own completely. I won't look at it. I won't do testing there. Maybe sometimes I will, just as a favor that it requires some bartering. Okay. One more, Matt.
Yeah. Oh, the developers do end-to-end testing. You trust them to do the sanity checks basically before it gets promoted to FC.
Absolutely, that's part of what we've taught them to do. So they run their tests, and in fact, this is worth talking about for a second. We have a pretty good system for making sure we have a good done list. And done, you guys have a done list for like when a feature's done. So we have not it kind of works. It used to be like it compiles, have fun, check it in. Instead, they have to have unit tests. They have to have integration tests. They have to have monitoring. If there's I'll go the whole list, and then even then, for our most of our products, the web app and the desktop app, it goes in behind a flag, which means it doesn't show up to users by default, but they can turn it on to be tested within context. And then only when that's all done, and they've done their own end-to-end testing and their own dog food, and our teams even organize their own bug bashes. I don't even have to buy their pizza. And then they come to shipper with, hey, this is done, we're turning it on in pre-production or production, et cetera. We have a short discussion about it and make sure they've done the dumb stuff. And it goes pretty well. And they own this stuff. They know they have to test that end to end. They know how to test, they know how to do bug bashes. I've done one team-wide bug bash. It was a lot of fun. They found some fantastic bugs. But that was enough to teach them how to do it on their own. And I think smaller group bug bashes work better than the large group bug bashes. Just for ends up being more of a learning experience. They get a lot out of it. I like doing bug bash. I don't even call it bug bashing. It's really what I've been doing for decades. Is similar to what it's my age reference again. Similar to what John Bach does in session-based testing. Small group of people say, "What are we going to do today?" And we learn from each other as we're exploring the product. And that's what most of our team does when they do bug bashing. Yes.
When so you've got external or vendor end-to-end testing going on. So they find eventually, presumably, they find something some of the time, or you wouldn't be paying them to do it. So what happens? Do you try as best as you can then to filter that back to next time? Let's catch this before it gets.
Yeah, pretty much there are bugs and there are bugs. I only say that because someone said that in a meeting today and I yelled at them. Yeah, it's the same thing like today, on all your teams. You find a bug, you think, you do a quick little mental RCA. How could this have been detected? Do we have a test for it? At first, because we're always, do we have a unit test with through cause? Do we have a unit test? Where should this have been caught? But we're also, because we're a website, it's also a lot of, do we have monitoring for this? Could we detect this if it happened on the server? So if all those things happen, especially with what we call them prod blocker bugs. Like anytime a build goes from the CI environment to pre-production, in those 2 days before it goes to production, we find a bunch of bugs. Some are bugs that we're okay shipping with, some aren't. The ones we aren't okay with, we put a tag on called prod blocker. And those, we also do some RCA on those, make sure we have monitors and tests. We're pretty good at those not having regressions.
And so in the first ring that the development and test, you don't have SDET.
No.
It doesn't have an SDET there. it's all development people that do the
Yes,
test.
you write your code, write your own test for it. And
And it's unit test and functional test and
Yeah.
anything that
yeah,
integration test,
yeah.
and then you're coming and testing end-to-end.
Right, then we just hit it at the end. And in fact, we had 2 builds last week. Was it last week's 2 builds? Where we shipped twice last week also. Shipped twice this week. Well, we shipped once this week. We'll ship again on Thursday. What was I going to say? Well, on both those builds, we didn't find any bugs that were problems. We had some bugs come in, nothing like, it's all right, we know that's not working, but nothing that would actually block it. So they're doing good work. And what I found I'll get your questions 1 second, is developers actually can write tests if you let them and make them. But also, here's the thing I also found out, because I also helped my old team in doing code reviews for their tests, learn to write tests. It doesn't matter if you are, actually I should say this, some developers just naturally write pretty good tests. Most don't. But what I found was interesting, it doesn't matter if you are a brand new dev out of college or like super senior architect dev. When you start writing tests, you write really crummy tests. I can't figure out how to make this sync, so I'll just do a sleep 1000. And you're laughing because you've seen it. And then, what else do they do? Things like, there are tests that fail, but don't tell you why they fail, so they're not debuggable at all. Things we've hopefully learned as testers. So, one of the best values I got early on was, hey, maybe we shouldn't have to attach a debugger and get a repro every time something fails. Maybe the log can tell you that. Wow, you're smart. Yeah, I've just seen a lot of failures. So, question tonight.
Does that include Selenium tests? And how did you convince the developers to write UI automation?
Yes, it includes Selenium tests, and we convinced them to write it because it's necessary.
Okay.
So, and I'll elaborate on the second half.
Right.
So we're I can probably say safely, we're an Angular app. So we use unit tests, Karma, Phantom.js for the unit tests, and we use Protractor for wrapping the Selenium tests. Most of them were smart enough to realize that we can have pretty good functional coverage in Phantom.js and still have stuff, really important stuff, not work. So we're going to have some sort of end-to-end tests in place. And so they started writing, and I also wrote an ebook called The A Word, which is still relevant. It's about talks about automation a lot, and one of the articles in there is called GUI Schmooey, about how GUI automation is mostly a waste of time. Yet here I am on a team doing it. And the trick with GUI automation or UI automation, even Selenium, which is sort of UI-ish, it works at a little layer below, but it's still hard to write tests that aren't flaky. And it took a long time, and we now have a suite of tests that is mostly not flaky and increasing in number and coverage. Almost all the time, I would say 90+% of the time, if not 95+% of the time, when a test fails, it's either a product bug or a bug that in the test that only occurs because the test wasn't updated to match the product, which is treated the same as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
The good news is we block at check-in about 10 to 15 bugs a week. 10 to 15, 10 regressions. Like the test caught this, would have been a product regression, never made it to the product. So the value is worth it. And we're trying to make it more and more valuable, less blocking, et cetera. But, maybe the answer is we got lucky and got people to think they were valuable, but they're sort of bought in now. They understand the fragility of it now, which maybe as a developer with a test team writing this stuff, you may say, why can't you guys write tests that work? But when you start writing these, like UI tests, I swear, I would rather write a cryptography engine than a UI test.
Well, why don't you do bottom-up testing? And have you tried to sell them on this idea? They do below the GUI or below the web client, basically.
And we do that. And Selenium is sort of in the middle there between the typical GUI point-and-click automation and the low-level unit stuff. But a bunch of our product that can't be tested unless you're doing it at the level of the web app.
Well, the reason you do that is because the higher priority bugs will be caught by.
Yeah, that's why we have
Okay.
we have.
Do you do native automation as well? Native apps?
We, no. We use, this is the short answer, but elaboration is always important, right? Our desktop apps aren't native, and for our mobile apps, we're using Appium.
And developers are writing Appium tests as well?
Yes, in fact, we're behind there. They're just getting started, but yeah. Okay, I've been on this slide a while. I think I have a few more. Let's go on. Diversity of skills on the team doesn't go away. One of the ways I've seen this fail, I've been picking on Microsoft a lot. Let me pick on someone else. What other company? Oh, let's pick on God. So, we saw this article or heard about this guy who said, brilliant idea! We're going to have, I only say brilliant because I've heard this like 50 times at Microsoft, we're going to have an engineering team. And we'll make the testers engineers and they'll write features and they can do testing and it's going to be great. And because we don't have the testers, the people will naturally write code that is accurate and works well.
Ho, ho, ho.
You know, it doesn't actually work that way, right? You still, test is dead, no. Is testing is definitely, maybe test is testers, I don't know. But the point is the activity still needs to happen. All the stuff that happened before with writing features and getting them tested and blah, blah, still happens. You're just asking it to happen in a slightly different structural model. So like, I'm the quality expert on the team. I check in code to our repo, but none of it's product code. I checked in a lot of, actually on Xbox, as a tester, more product code than anywhere else in my career at Microsoft. But mostly like little bug fixes and like, or the static analysis tools, and I'll just fix these bugs because it's more efficient to have me do it and things like that. Many teams, whether it's the Algebra teams at Microsoft, have tried to do, they call it combined engineering at Microsoft. I prefer the term unified engineering. And the model for you visual people is, I think of like an oil and vinegar dressing. That's combined engineering. And I'm more like ranch dressing, where it stays mixed all the time. If you expect everyone on the team to be able to do every single thing soup to nuts, you're going to fail. It's not going to work. Specialists are important. And I believe in this concept of, and probably heard this in the Agile model, specializing generalists and generalizing specialists. I've always been a breadth person. I consider myself a specializing generalist. I know a lot about a little and a little about a lot. And some areas like quality and testing, I can dive in pretty deep. I can also help out in dev. Actually, I've done it all. I was a developer once. I almost forgot. Before Ian came, we worked on Windows CE together. But when I first joined the team, I didn't have enough work in my area, and I was in this meeting, and I heard there was a bunch of shell work that wasn't being done. I said, I can do that. I said, great, you're a developer. Go do it. So I did like Windows CE 4. I wrote, there were like 18 shell bugs and like 6 features that weren't going to get done. So I did the features, and I fixed all the bugs. Fixing the bugs, I love. It was fun. I love debugging and tracking down and fixing bugs. Writing the features was boring for me. And that's different. There could be people you work with that go, I want to write the features, I don't want to fix the bugs. I think it's important people to, I would prefer someone who likes to fix the bugs better, but you want the diversity in skills. You want the team to contain all the skills you need. My manager said, I got this great team of great engineers. Nobody's thinking about quality. I need someone thinking about quality. Let me plug a piece in there. If you're building a team like this, or if you have influence in building a team, you want to make sure you have all the skills you need. It doesn't happen automatically. You don't just decide, sorry, go back up here. You don't just decide that everybody's going to do everything and it just works. You need to have the skills. There's a Scott Silver's quote, which I'll read to you off my slide, very boring. By staffing a team with people who have an area of expertise, you can do anything, you can maximize the value of each delivery cycle. And this is just a better put way of saying what I just said, getting that diversity really helps. So let me draw a picture. Again, I like to appeal to the visual people. Here's a pie chart. Yay! Actually, now I'm hungry. When you think about building a product, we'll do our development stuff. We'll do our project management stuff, whatever you want to call that. And then as my friend Jim Moore says, then you need to have a team to do the remainder. And that's typically the test team, who may cover everything from testing to release to whatever. Hopefully not shoveling manure. There's that remainder. But the remainder is a lot of stuff. On my team, it's deployment. On some teams, there's that data science word. You know what you call a statistician in Silicon Valley? A data scientist. There's a bunch of stuff that fits into that remainder, so it doesn't look like that. The teams, whether you have separated teams, teams, or a unified or combined team, it looks more like that. There's all the pieces need to be there. You may have, I've been on teams where performance was owned by the test team, and I've been on teams where performance improvements were owned by the development team. Does it matter? Not one bit. So even if you're not a combined engineering team, you can also think about, do we have the people with the best skills doing these things? Maybe you have a separate test team, and you may think that, you know what, maybe, oh, you know what would help? How many of you on your test team own the test infrastructure? Maybe the dev team should own that. I mean, I don't want to take your work away from you. I'm just thinking, you can look at like, maybe just think about these things. All right? So, one important thing before I go. Most important thing I can tell you before I think it's something more important is when I wrote that book, I told you it was obsolete. I had people come to me like at conferences or talks like this and say, hey, got your book, a bunch of people at my company read it, we're using it as a blueprint. And at first I went, and then I went, no, this is not a blueprint. This is, I'm giving you an example of how it's worked or it's working for me, and hopefully some background on why teams choose to do this. But for my team, absolutely makes complete sense. Ian's making a spaceship. I want some, maybe I don't want to do that there. You don't want to do short, there's always like, the agile thing is short iterations, fail fast. So, again, grain of salt, figure out if it makes sense in context. And, another way of looking at it is think about like what you want to do should drive your change. And tell me if you've seen, ask this, embarrassing how true it is, but a team decides, hey, we're going to be agile. Why? Because it's cool. And this might happen too. You see teams go, this guy from Microsoft said they don't need testers. Let's do that. They just throw context away, do things for a goal. Like maybe there's an efficiency goal that makes sense. Like the way things are going, it makes sense for a lot of reasons to have a unified engineering team. Or it makes sense to do agile, or it makes sense to do whatever. But don't be one of those people or teams that do things because you think it's the right thing for the wrong reasons. So that's an even more important message in the blueprint. Don't read my book and say, that's what we're doing. No, it's scary. What if someone read it today and said that? It's even worse. Because the point is, for a lot of these things, you're not as different as you think you are. These things are, whether you think, well, this would never work for my product, or we want to go do this today, put it in context and figure out what makes sense for you and your team. I can share my stories and answer some more questions about it. So it's question and discussion time until they kick me off the front here. So more questions. Yes?
Can you think of like any area of quality that has been harder or has suffered since you went with unified engineering?
Oh. Yeah, and there's a reason I don't have, the first thing is I don't have short answers for anything. Those 3 testers I have on site, working purely on end-to-end, there was a time they were doing primarily functional testing. And then it's like, holy crap. We had built, and I told this to our VP just on Monday, I showed him our test results, and these are largely green. What that means is we've built a product that's largely functionally correct. I looked at it and said, but it's not that good yet, is it? Because we've been focusing a lot. I got late to the party. In my time machine, I go back and think about this end-to-end sooner. I neglected it up front because I was so worried about getting the product functionally correct and so many fires there. So that's been one big learning, is getting that sort of, how does the product look as a whole? There was a time in our product where I felt like we have a product full of features that are, I'll say liberally, 70% done. And you have a product full of those? It's not so good, right?
You're not 70% done.
You're not even close. It's 70 times 70, so it's a horrible experience. Now we have a product that's largely done with some chunks 80 to 90% done. And even there, you get the holes they're canyons. All this is like, it's just not a good experience. So if I could start over again, I would focus on that experience from the beginning and work from the experience down to the functional correctness. But I fought the fire that I saw that was burning the brightest. Yes?
I guess that's where I'd poke on the user research thing.
Okay.
Where like, to use the Henry Ford model, like, they might not know they wanted a Ford car, but you could show them the car and say, how do I make this better?
Yeah, and I believe in that, and I believe in the user research up front, and our product did that before I even joined the team. So we feel like we're building the right product, but there's the part about getting it from there to completing the user experience.
Right.
Like the car example would be, quickly think about what the 80% car would be. It's like, sometimes the steering wheel comes off, but not if you hold it tightly. There's a workaround, it's fine. There's a workaround, the customer will be fine. I have to pump up the right rear tire every other night, and sometimes when I want to put it in reverse, I have to try twice. These are all major defects in a car, but when you equate them to software, you go, fine, ship it. Yes.
So I'm going to throw a comment that's a little extreme and see what you
I wouldn't think anything less of you.
Yeah. So right now I have a unique experience of not only working with people in mechanical engineering and electrical engineering and so forth. We don't just work in the same building, we actually interact excessively. I do both hardware and software. And I would go so far as to say that there is no such thing as software engineering. That we really don't do engineering the way almost any other product development process does engineering.
That's totally correct. That's the term we use.
And that may be part of our obstacle. Because the thing that I see with mechanical engineers and electrical engineers and the fluids people and people like that is they design, implement, test against the design.
Yeah.
And by the time they get to implement, they've got the design details down to the point where really they're kicking it out of the park most of the time. And then you have specialists, I like that, who come in and say, oh, let's look at the way that you made this metal bond, or let's look at the way that these connectors connect, or something like that. So you have your specialists who come in and evaluate the implementation, but the design has been so thoroughly evaluated that you're fairly confident that you have correctness in what you're doing.
Yeah, but there's a big difference between the correctness and building something that's correct versus something people want to use. My phone in 1998 was, or 1999, was functionally correct, but not something that was, and it met requirements, I'm sure, but it wasn't, didn't engage me. It didn't have a user experience that made me want to keep using it.
My favorite bug was the fact that when somebody called you, the phone number showed up in this itty bitty tiny font, and I was old enough by that point that I had to pull up my reading glasses to find out who was calling me.
Nice. So I worked in a power plant before I got into software testing. One thing I would say about that is, I don't want to say that it's easier to test engineering designs than it is to test software designs, but it's a much more mature process.
I would also say that it's a much easier process to throw something out the door with software.
Yes.
Because you don't have to build a multi-million-dollar plant
Yes.
and all of this.
Fail fast works.
Yeah, fail fast.
Works better when the most expensive thing is developer time than when the most expensive thing is the physical prototype you build.
Yeah, the cost of iterating is much higher than what you are.
Yeah. Our cost of iteration is easy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have you seen challenges either from a performance valuation perspective or career growth? The people who maybe specialize in quality feeling like they have to be pushing product code?
I haven't, but it's interesting to bring that up because, again, as I mentioned before, one, manager is smart enough to bring a quality guy over. He's going to value me. And then when I hired this new superstar for my team, who's hopefully not watching because now he's going to feel awkward, he asked that question. He said, so I'm on this sort of quality team. Am I going to, what's going to happen there? I said, you know what? Talk to my boss. I made I'm on the internet. And they met, and he came back and said, yeah, I'm taking the job. He gets it. So it depends a lot on management support and actually getting that. I've always, I'll tell a story about the opposite way. So I was on the Xbox team, and I was sort of the test architect, but I don't like that title, because I'm not, if I'm not an engineer, I'm certainly not an architect. But I, as an IC, was sort of in charge of making sure our strategy and test infrastructure and how we tested Xbox One was all kind of correct. And my manager said, I don't think he told me, I think he asked, should we have a tools team? I said, no. He said, why? I said, because traditionally, the tools team, at Microsoft at least, this is not true at all companies. Some companies put their best engineers in the world on solving tools for the company. At Microsoft, they traditionally put like low-level people to come up with tools that don't last very long. So those teams end up being like, you're just a tools team. You're not shipping a feature to a customer. That has happened to teams at Microsoft. So it depends entirely, I think, on that culture and that support for management. So I bet there are teams at Microsoft where if you are the infrastructure tools guy, you're not well valued. That's one of the things we're trying to change in our culture. I don't know if there are any of the Microsofties here, but we're trying to change that part of our culture and getting people to value people for, used to be just features. Now we're actually going to value for things like contributing to open source, which is weird for Microsoft. So we're like, but it depends. Sufficiently complex question. But sorry, if somebody talked to it. Yes.
So you just talked about trying to give more value or respecting more the internal tools guy. How about making the tools better? Do you still do hey, it's just an internal guide, then it's fine?
No. As far as making the tools better, I told you I took over that team that owns everything from code to deployment. So I also consider my team the engineering productivity team. If the engineers across the whole team aren't happy, I've told you this story before, right? Then that's my fault. That's as much of part of my job as product quality, because I think those two go hand in hand. So we do build better tools. We make the tools easier to use. We look for, I'm a big believer in theory of constraints. You may have read The Goal. Yep. So I love that book. And the concepts are great. Find the bottleneck. You don't have to solve it completely. Just mitigate that bottleneck enough until it's not the biggest bottleneck anymore, and then fix the next one. And that's what we do, as far as that pipeline goes. Our developers they check in their code, they want to get it to that CI environment. When it gets blocked because tests are failing, it's not my fault, it's still mad at me, I don't get it. But they're getting better at we made it easy for them to figure out which tests are failing and whose fault it was, so they can go fix it. They know who to yell at, and now that largely happens off my team. We used to babysit that stuff. Now they figure out, hey, you broke my test, you broke the build, I want the build to get in. So my goal is to get, we have a goal, a velocity goal, of getting all of our code from the moment the pull request is approved to deployed in our CI environment, 90% of the time in under 2 hours. We can do, best case, we did, I counted every week, we did 24 times last week in less than an hour. About 35 times less than 2 hours, and the other larger number were longer. So, but we have room to grow there. I'm getting way better. That's part of my job. That's important to me, because getting that stuff in there gives them a chance to test their stuff. They test their own stuff there. The better we can do there, the better quality product we're going to have. I mentioned we ship twice a week. My goal, every build is, this is one thing about incremental deliveries, is every build that goes to production needs to be better than the one before. That's my bar. So if there are big major regressions, can't promote, gotta be fixed. Are there more features, more value to the customer? That helps out too. But I figure if I can do that, we just started shipping twice a week about 2 weeks ago. Did once a week before then. But if I can keep doing that, twice a week, every build better than the one before, 6 months from now, 3 months from now, whenever, it starts to turn into a pretty good product. We're still very early right now. So, do I just come up here and punch me or tap me on the shoulder?
Well, I know that a lot of people have considers and deadlines and things, so maybe those with extra questions can stick around and ask you, and we'll just do the drawing and the wrap-up. If that's okay,
yeah.
Unless you have another point you want to close with.
No.
Fair enough. So, let's see. We have
a stereo.
We have an entertainment book, and I also have a $10 Starbucks gift card to go with. So,
don't look. I ask annoying questions. You don't hurt too much.
This one.
The winner is.
Oh no! I need another card.
All right. This is Scott.
I haven't worked for him for years.
You notice I didn't look.
That's one of the business cards.
He is the only.
I haven't intentionally buried that. A good cluster can stack it back.
He is so deviant and embarrassing.
Oh my God. Really? I picked these two guys?
Yeah, you know any questions.
All right, so before everybody gets out of here, our talk in July are the lightning talks. And we're still looking for a couple of extra speakers. If anybody is interested in doing that, they're just little 7 to 10 minute things. And we like to have 5 people participate, and they're really cool. They're easy. They're lower stress. You don't have to put together a whole presentation like Alan did, and they're fun. So if you'd like to do that, then send an email to ShellyD@CoreDev, or you can just send it to me or whatever. But anyway, great talk.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.